Well, good afternoon, Jalen and Cacie. Welcome to today's conversation. I'm really excited to really explore our conversation in which we discussed a few weeks ago, and we've been fine tuning ever since. And just again, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it and cannot wait to introduce you and what you've been up to and what you represent. So let's get started. And again, welcome.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you for having us.
So, in today's conversation, we will explore choosing alignment over exhaustion, intention over intensity, and discovering how purpose can reshape your work, your relationships, and your joy. Let's dive into what it really means to be productive without pressure, stress, or burnout. I am again joined by two really special guests, Jalen and Cacie. And these two are a dynamic husband and wife team, entrepreneurs, ministers, authors, podcasters, and speakers with a shared mission to help others discover their God given purpose and pursue it without boundaries. Together, they lead Third Floor Media, producing live events like Overcome the Pressure and Driven by Purpose, and sharing biblically inspired content with over 10,000 online followers. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you for having us.
So, as I mentioned backstage, I was really taken aback by Jalen's outgoing personality. And we met at a recent technology event in
Mhm.
Tennessee. And I did a speech to talk about marketing and the construction industry, et cetera. And Jalen came up to me and we had a really nice conversation. And then that's where he mentioned Cacie, Jalen's wife. And we just had a really nice conversation. I was really intrigued at what you both have been building, not only in your personal but professional lives and extending this to serve others. Can you both start sharing what that looks like and how it all began and really what it means to you to be a husband-wife dynamic team?
Yeah. Well, I was at that event alone, but I can't go too long in professional setting without talking about my wife because we do so much together. And at the event that I was attending, I was representing my business, Security Data Supply of Norfolk, which is a distribution business in the security and intrusion and low voltage industry. And although I tend to do that, mostly the operations by myself, my wife is always in the background with that. But together we handle Third Floor Media,
Yep.
which is our business. So the kind of history of that is that pretty much started 2 weeks after we got married. In a
Oh,
sense, if we really
In
go
a
back to
sense,
the
yeah.
inception of it, we had just gotten married back in 2016. And I was in prayer, and the Lord said, open up your house and invite couples and just start preaching the blessing. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how
wow.
we're able to pull this off. Because we do a lot. You listed a lot, and it's all 100% true. We do
Yeah.
all of it.
And the name Third Floor came from
Yep.
because we was on the third floor
Mhm.
of our apartment complex at the time.
Yep.
So,
hmm
that's where the name came from.
Exactly. And that's where everything started for us
Mhm.
in that apartment that we got married in and started everything in. So from there, we started sharing the blessing with people. And that over time grew into this business, Third Floor Media. So we do Overcome the Pressure, which is a men's Bible study. And then Cacie does Driven by Purpose. And I'll let you talk more about that if we get a chance later for women. And we've done, like you said, we have over 10,000 followers on all of our platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and chiefly doing marriage ministry there. So yes, we've been doing all that together as well as other businesses as well that we may get into as husband and wife, and we enjoy it. We truly enjoy
Yeah.
working together. We work better together. If we're working on something a solo project, it's not long before we rope the other one in, no matter how busy we are. So I need your help. I need you to come in and start helping with this too. So we do all that while also being parents to a very rambunctious 4-year-old toddler, Jalen Jr.
Mhm.
So a lot of
Oh,
fun.
oh, wow. Well, how neat. I know that Casey's going to get into what her expertise and contributions are and all this, but I love the fact that you really started with opening your house, opening your
Mhm.
home to others and really what that started and that little apartment. And it just seems such a paradox to really what you have become and grown into and still serving others. And I just, meeting just you was really inspiring. I could not wait to meet Cacie and learn more about her. So please tell us a little bit about yourself, Cacie, and what you bring to our world.
Well, my background is in the beauty professional world. I'm currently still a licensed cosmetologist for over 20 years. And I love working with women, especially, again, helping them discover the beauty that only they possess, because I believe all of us have an intrinsic value that God has given us. But a lot of times it's squashed by insecurity and fear and just trauma and a whole lot of other things. And it's a privilege and honor to work with women one-on-one in that way. I'm also a pastor's kid. So I grew up in the church and I grew up with strong leadership in my life. I'm also the praise and worship leader of our church now. I'm also the pastor's assistant. I'm used to working and burning the midnight oil and just being on the ground level of most things and help building it and watching it grow. So I don't have a problem with working hard and really just getting down in the dirt, really. So when Jalen and I got married, we both had that same energy. So it was just sort of natural for us to want to share and teach. And I'm a teacher. I'm also an educator, also in my beauty profession. So I love teaching and I love training. And I just want people to, again, discover their worth, their value. And when I see people with potential, but they have habits that keep them from fully living it out, it's like, oh my gosh, let me talk to you. Come here, like a big sister or something like that. And so that's, really where my background comes from. I was in business by myself for a while before we got married. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I really see in you two is just such a mutual respect, and really I see that it's clear as day, and the excitement and the energy that you both bring. And I really love what you just said, Cacie, too, about the habits. We all have
Yeah.
them, and it takes people like you both to hopefully realign and reinstate the good belief systems and the good value systems
Yeah.
that we all can sway away from. So it's just really excited about what you have to offer. And again, Jalen, thank you for approaching me at that event, because I was really impressed by you and what your message is. And now meeting your lovely wife, it totally makes sense. So excellent, excellent. Well, let's get into some questions. I know that we mentioned a few items as to intent and not burnout, and to live a more of a work-life balance, but that seems a little bit more cliche. But let's really get into some
Yes.
more meaningful conversation topics, key points that I'd like to ask you.
Yeah.
And the first one, what that comes to mind is you talk about the blessing system versus the toil system. Can you explain the difference and how someone might recognize which one they're living in?
It's very easy to recognize what you're living in. If you ever feel like, there's not enough time in the day to get it all done, it's 3 steps forward and 4 steps back. You're stressed, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're developing bad habits, whether it be just bad behaviors or addictions and things like that, to sort of kind of medicate what it is that you're going through and what you're dealing with. You feel underappreciated. You feel like there's so much you're trying to accomplish and produce, but there's just not enough in you to get it done, not enough time in the day. There needs to be 10 of you to get it done, and you're just burned out. It's just not working. That's how you know you're on the toil system. So the difference between the blessing and the toil system, the rest system versus the curse system, it goes all the way back to the very beginning of human history. When you go back to Genesis chapter 3 with God and Adam and Eve in the garden, and he said something very specific to them after they ate the fruit and broke covenant with God. They decided to separate from God and do things on their own. They separated from their life source. And he said, okay, this is what life is going to be like now. And he described something that it's easy to just gloss over, but when you look at it, it perfectly describes what we all deal with. We all default to that toil system. And he described how, you're going to have to work by the sweat of your brow. Everything that you're going to eat, you're going to have to work for it, and it's going to be sweat, and it's going to be toil, and it's going to be painful. And one day you'll return to the dust that you came from, and you're going to burn yourself out. You'll die in the doing of it. But if you go back to Genesis 1 and 2 and look at the first system, the system of blessing, it said God blessed them and he said to them, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, be productive. It wasn't just about multiplying humanity as having babies, but it was very clear when you look at those words, the productivity that mankind was supposed to have. So we were meant to be productive. We were meant to be workers. We were meant to get things done for sure. But it was supposed to be very different because in that system, he also said that he gave everything freely to eat. And there were semi-precious stones littering the Garden of Eden. There were rivers and the mist came up from the ground. And so what you saw was mankind back then in the blessing system, they weren't working to feed themselves. They weren't working for a living to survive. They were working unto the glory of God, to produce his kingdom, to multiply his kingdom, to expand it from outside that garden throughout the entire physical universe. And then when they broke away from God and said, okay, we don't need him, we can do this ourselves. He said, okay, this is what it's like when you're pulling as your own source. If you become your own God and become your own source, it's not going to be enough. You're going to burn out and you're going to fail early. Yeah. And that's the main difference between those two systems.
Yeah. And when you're working on the blessing system, there is a grace and there is an empowerment to do what you're called to do. You know, we're not telling you that you won't have challenges, but you will have the grace to get it done. Doors of favor will be open unto you. And where someone else had to work 10, 20 hours and you know, basically like we're talking about, kill themselves to get ahead, you can achieve the same thing, but maintain peace, maintain rest, and only flourish. You know, we live in a society, especially social media, it sells you a hustle culture. You know, we was kind of talking about this a little bit before we came on live about, you know, just working so hard and, you know, not knowing when to transition from one thing to the next, because our culture today tells us you can do everything. You can be all, you can be this and that all at the same time. And you really can't. There's only so many hours in a day. You're one person.
Exactly.
You know, and any professional out there, any millionaire, billionaire can tell you, you know, if all of your income or all of your success is only being produced by what you can do with your two hands, you're doing it wrong. Because you're going to burn out. You know, you only can last but so long. And I've learned that from being in the beauty industry for so long. And I realized at some point, I can't only handle but so many clients a day before I burn out and I'm tired and I'm stressed. Like I need a break. So I had to learn how to work in the blessing, work with wisdom, and let God direct my path.
Yes. And when you are following his instruction, Jesus said, I can of myself do nothing. The Father that dwelleth within me, he does the work. So Jesus, who was God in the flesh, was showing a humility and a submission to the Father and saying that I can only do this because I'm depending on the source. All these great miracles that I'm doing, all the success is because I'm dependent on him. And he spent many times, I would say he would go into desert places, separated places to pray. And he would spend time hearing what he should do next. And what he was saying was, I'm not just making random moves. I'm not just flying off the handle and just come up with an idea. I'm listening and then I'm acting. And when you do that, God will meet your needs. And a perfect example, you know, I think we talked about this. I know we just talked about that at the very first in the beginning about how we got started. We were in that apartment. It was less than 2 weeks we had been in there. We had no furniture. And you wanted furniture. I wanted furniture. You probably wanted it more than me. Furniture. I could sleep on the floor, but we needed furniture. We had no chairs, anything. And I remember the first Sunday you were doing makeup. It was like you might have had like a dining room chair and then a tray, like a little TV tray. And she had all her stuff set up and she, you know, it was messy. But like I said, less than 2 weeks we were married and I was praying and the Lord said, open up your home. So I went to her and said, this is what the Lord said we should do. And she said, okay, I'm in agreement. We need some furniture. So obviously we need furniture. We had no money. We were very meager salary at the time, but we were going to obey God. So we set the date and we began to invite people with no furniture in the house. And we had an idea of maybe we could borrow some chairs from our church. You know, we could figure it out. And I remember I was in prayer one day and I won't go into the whole story, but long story short, the Lord basically commanded us, ask him for something. And so I went to my wife and I said, what do you want to ask for? And she said, we need some furniture. So I believe it was 2 or 3 days before that meeting. It was a Saturday evening. We were going to have those couples come over. 2 or 3 days, my boss, I give a shout out to my boss, Jason. He calls me and says, yeah, we just got some new furniture and you want my old furniture? And so brought it over to my house. And we got a big chair, big couch. We got like 2 or 3 pieces of furniture. It lasted us for most of the time we were in that apartment. I think probably the entire time before we moved into our home that we're in now. And just a couple of days before that meeting. And so that's the blessing system in a nutshell. Instead of you having to figure out how to do it all, you do what he said do.
There's provision in obedience.
Exactly.
And that's the part that those that don't understand the system that we're talking about, that there is provision when you obey God. And, you know, we're not selling you don't have to get up and work. You know, the Bible talks about being lazy and how it's important to put your hands to the work, but you have to be doing the work that God has commanded you to do.
Exactly.
Because when you do that, the provision will be there. The grace will be there. Everything you need will be provided for you. Because God's not going to call you to something and don't provide what you need.
Exactly.
I mean, no good boss would do that. And God is better than any boss or any person you can encounter in life. But even a good boss will give you the tools necessary to do the job correctly. Because it won't be fair for him to punish you or garnish your wages if he didn't give you what you need to do the job. You know? So God is way better than that. So we have to just trust that God will provide when you are obedience.
Just do what he's telling you to do and it'll work out.
Every time.
Great feedback. Thank you. And I like the sweat of the brow and provisions and believing. And I like your comment, Cacie, that God is a great boss. And but it also is important to have bosses or management or leadership that sees what you need to get the job done effectively and appropriately. So excellent. This is really fun to talk to you both. I'm really enjoying this. Okay, so the second conversation piece would be, so many people equate productivity with constant pressure. How do you personally stay productive without falling into the stress and anxiety circle?
So that goes back to staying in rest, which sounds counterintuitive, right? I mean, hard work and rest, like how does that work? But Proverbs 10:22 says, the blessing of the Lord maketh rich and addeth no sorrow with it. So you can be fruitful, you can be productive, you can bear fruit without the sorrow and the pain. And that word sorrow translates toil, pain, like the pain of a thorn stabbing you, that sort of thing. So we all know what that feels like, that mental stress, that mental anguish. We've all been there some way or the other. And like you said, you know, it's not a challenge that's ever go away. You always have the temptation to fall back into that. But when you begin to feel that, it's the understanding of, okay, I've gotten out of rest. What am I doing? I had one of my Overcome the Pressure meetings a couple of weeks ago. And one keynote I said in there was, one way to know that you're out of the will of God, you're not doing what he instructed you to do, is when you start feeling these stresses and these pains and this pressure and these anxieties, because then that means that either you weren't listening to what he told you to do and you've missed it, you're off in the wrong arena, or you've decided to add some things on that he never told you to do in the first place. Because sometimes we start with the right thing. We know, I believe, whether people are born again, following Jesus or not, a lot of people have this inherent knowledge of, I'm supposed to do something. And sometimes they find it, they find what that purpose is and they go do it. But even when you know what arena, what industry you're supposed to be in, who you're supposed to affect, what the community you're supposed to serve, you can still burn yourself out by doing too much, by taking on too much. And if you don't know how to delegate, then we get real practical. Do you know how to delegate? Do you know how to surround yourself with a good team? Do you have people that can speak into your life and give you good counsel so you're not getting off track? Do you have good leadership yourself that you can submit to and listen, and they can catch you and say, hold on, you're doing too much. And so when those things happen, when those feelings of anxiety, those feelings of fear and toil, it's a sign. It's a good thing that you feel it, to know, wait a minute, I need to backtrack and see where I missed it. Where'd I get off track?
And like we were discussing before we got on, you know, learning how to prioritize what's really, really important to you. And is it in line with what you want to accomplish? Is it in alignment with your faith? Is it in alignment with your family goals, your financial goals, whatever those goals may be? Because if it's not, then we leave that alone. A lot of times we allow situations or people pull us out of character and stretch us way too thin. You know, you cannot say yes to everything. You're going to have to learn how to say no. You're going to have to learn how to have cutoff times. And this is something that it was very hard for us to learn. I
probably still have to work on the cutoff time.
You're still working on that. I still work on it at times too. But it's like, okay, I don't care what's going on. I'm done at 5:00. No work. We're not talking about business, because I need that time to regroup, spend time with our son, you know, work on our relationship, you know, making sure that we're good. And you have to have those constant check-ins. on your relationship, especially if you're married. You got to check in. Are we good? What do we have to work on? We first before anything else, because at any time there seems to be a problem arising between us, we shut everything down, because we will not sit in front of anybody or behind any mic and lie. We want to be authentic. We want to be real. And if there's anything in your life that's pulling you out of your authenticness, you need to stop it. Because I think that's the problem we have today. People are just selling burned out lies. People are shells of themselves, just trying to get the views, the likes, and the endorsements, but it's not worth it. The Bible talks about, what is it to gain the whole world and then lose your soul? It's not worth it.
That's good, Cacie. You just gave me the chills on that one. Woo, that was a good one.
So you met me first, Kevallyn, but my wife is better at this than I am. But I want to say something to that, because let's just talk about it a little bit. We live in this influencer culture. Everyone's selling you a course. And what you find is people are selling an idea because you're their livelihood. They need you to buy into. They need the views. They need the purchase of the subscriptions, whatever. They need all of that. And when we started ministry, opening our home, we just did it because we loved it. We were broke at the time. We weren't looking for money. We didn't get any money. We were online. We always made decisions about what we did with our online platforms based on what was authentic to the ministry. We've turned down opportunities to go on, different platforms and fly to different places, because we just didn't believe that's the way God was leading us, because we're not doing this because we need money to keep it going. God's always taking care of us. And that's the importance of the blessing system here is God meets your needs. God pays my bills. I'm everything that I do is because he led me to do it. And I'll stop doing it if he says stop doing it tomorrow, because I'm not concerned about, am I going to have enough? He's taking care of us. If we had time, if we had an hour, we'd sit here and say every miracle of provision God's done, apart from our salaries, apart from any work we've ever done. I've been through losing the job. I've been through pay cuts. We've been through it all. And it doesn't matter. We've always stayed true to the goal and to the mission, the assignment. But to make sure I stay on topic of the first question, one thing I think that sums it up is, we use this example a lot. If I'm not a pilot, but what I understand from people who fly planes is you got to watch your instruments. You can't get a caught in noise, always what you see. You got to look at your instruments. But if you have a heading, if you have a bearing that you're supposed to stay on, if you get off by maybe just 1 degree, the separation where you're supposed to be isn't much. It's very small, but you keep that up for 100 miles, 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles. One day you're going to be way off somewhere else, way, way far away from your original destination. And so those feelings of fear and stress are good triggers to let you know, wait a minute, maybe I'm getting off and I need to quickly collect myself and find out where I am, listen to the Spirit of God, because if I keep on this pathway, it'll lead to burnout and I'll end up somewhere far different from my original destination.
Absolutely. I really like the key points that you have mentioned all throughout. I can see why you have 10,000 plus followers, because it is everything that you're talking about is resonating with me, and it's just me. I can only imagine just the messages that you consistently deliver, that really can be a fine line between habits, maybe exploiting the habits that somebody has, to leadership and maybe seeing someone in need that needs direction, like you had mentioned, and maintaining that balance of really the passion and the message versus burnout and the job layoffs and the transitions and the items that come in on an everyday basis that can really make or break our days. And I love this. This is really a unique and special conversation, and I hope that everyone else is enjoying it as much as I am. Okay, you guys are great. This is really, really fun. For someone who feels stuck in the hustle mentality, what's one small shift they can make today towards the blessing system?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I love this one because it's also extremely scary, extremely risky, and even dangerous. You have to stop. You got to stop moving.
Turn it all off.
So we talked about the blessing system in Genesis and then the toil system in Genesis 3. And so you saw man get off that. And so everyone defaulted to that toil system. So we're all born into this world. We're all in that toil system. Don't feel bad. We all just default into that. But Jesus came and invited everyone back into the original blessing system. And he showed how to operate it there was no one more productive with a greater purpose and assignment than Jesus of Nazareth. He had a large organization. It wasn't just 12 disciples. You read through, there were at any given point hundreds and hundreds of people following him. He had 12 sent apostles. It was a large organization. He was not without controversy. He was not without opposition, sometimes against his own body, against his reputation, lies and slander. Social media would have had a field day with him. There was a lot of money in his organization. He did have a treasurer by the name of Judas. We all know him. But he had donors who traveled with him and tended to all his needs in ministry and life. He did have his own home, and people misinterpret a scripture, but he had a home, a base of operations in Capernaum, but he traveled on a circuit locally throughout Judea, and it was a lot. And he got a lot done, and he accomplished the whole world has been changed. Whether you believe or don't believe, the world has been changed by the existence of Jesus. So that man showed us how to have maximum productivity without toil, without the collapse, without the burnout. He had a very specific mission. He accomplished it in 3 years, and then he got out of here when he was done. And then he left it to us to continue. And so the shift that he said was, come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. And he was talking to, it was Mary and Martha, and one of them was complaining about the other not helping because she was sitting down at his feet listening while the other was preparing food and dishes and all these things. And he said, Martha, you're concerned about a great many things, but Mary has chosen the good part. Basically, slow down.
Yeah.
Stop. Listen, I'm not going to be here for very long. He knew he was going to be here for only 3 years. Listen and take advantage. And so what we have to do is stop and listen to Jesus. It hasn't changed. Even if he's not here in the earth anymore, he sent his spirit, the comforter, to deliver to us everything that he said. He mentioned that in the last chapters of John. And so we have to stop and listen. And that's scary when you have a lot of plates spinning. Oh, yeah. That's scary when the bills are going and there's all these fires and it's like, I got to put everything out. Mm-hmm. But you have to stop and begin to listen to the Spirit of God and find out, what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah. And a real life practical example of that is me. Like I said, prior to us getting married, I had my own business, working in the salon, and I'm Cacie the artist. That's what I went by. And the Lord spoke to my husband, and he was like, "Oh, it's time for her to come from behind the chair." I did not agree at first. I didn't want to do that because this was my whole identity. This is who I was. I built this from the ground up. But long story short, I came from behind a chair, and it was exactly what I needed. I needed not only to be refreshed physically, but spiritually. I needed to get a whole new perspective of business and how to pursue it again. Because like we were talking about before, you can get 1 degree off and you can move so long that way that you're so far away from the original plan. And I didn't realize I had moved away from the original plan, and I was not being as productive as I could be because of that. So here I am, and it's been coming up on 5 years, and I do not regret it because I have a whole renewed sense of purpose, and God has revealed so many other things he wants me to do, and not just be a person behind a chair, which I love, but it's not the totality of who I am. And sometimes we can get so stuck in one thing that we don't allow God to expand us and to reveal to us who we really are and all the things that he put in us, because we get stuck and because we are afraid to let go of that thing that we built. And I'm thankful because it's given me the opportunity to raise my son, watch him grow. And I would have missed out on that if I did not walk away from that. But God is moving and we're growing, and I'm so thankful for being obedient to that one thing.
Yeah, no, and that was a great example actually of what you had to do. And that, like I said, that could feel scary because
it was very scary.
Well, one, income can be tied to these things. I remember when the Lord told me that it was time for it to stop. We were still working on both our incomes, and my income had not changed at that moment. But I just trusted God. We had a saying in our household: trust God or die. Like, it sounds extreme, but it's like that's how we're going to live. And so I knew, okay, you're going to take care of us. And sure enough, right after it happened, my income, I had a raise, I had some new accounts come in. It all just worked out. And so learning to stop and trust and listen, and it's very, and a lot of people don't do it. I'm gonna be very honest. It's very few people do it. I mentioned earlier that Jesus had hundreds of people following him at any given time. However, when he resurrected and sent them to the upper room for Pentecost, there was only 120 left. That's a very small amount from where he started when he started. So he had a great organization, but there was only a few people left by the time it was done. Why is that? Because it's not easy to let go of what you know. There was a story of the rich young ruler who came to Jesus and said, I want what you have. You have the key to eternal life. Show me what I need to do. And they talked a little bit about all the things that he had done up to that point. He kind of did like an assessment of his life and his productivity. And then Jesus said, okay, but there's one thing you lack if you want what I have. You're going to have to sell all you have and give to the poor. Now, it's interesting because he didn't give that instruction to everyone. However, there was an instruction that everyone got, and that was you're going to have to abandon what you know and turn from what you know in order to follow me and learn of me. And that man's riches was keeping him from doing it. And that man, if you read the story, did not follow through, and he walked away sorrowful because he had so many things that he had built with his own skill and intelligence. He was afraid of stopping and letting it all go.
Mhm.
Later on, Jesus, when talking to his disciples, said that if anybody who gives up anything for me will receive 100 times in this life. So that
Yeah.
man would have ended up with more than what Jesus told him to give. But he didn't stay long enough to understand that part and to get that
Yeah.
revelation. But the rest of his disciples did, and they sold out their lives to him. And up till death, we hear the story of the apostles because it was worth it, and they understood the value of this. And that's what we believe we understand and
Yeah,
hope that
God does
attend
not
to.
leave you high and dry when you follow him.
Yeah, not at
He
all.
would never leave you high and dry.
Mm-mm.
Well, I love the behind the chair story. I think that's really something it's reality, and it's something
Yes.
that I feel a lot of people could really understand whatever chair it is that they're standing behind or on, or
Mhm.
and in my own personal experiences professionally, anytime that it's either been not out of my control to leave, or if it was my control to leave, I never looked back. That it was always a growing step,
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
growth
Yeah.
adventure. And it had that not have happened, I wouldn't have experienced that consistent growth. Sometimes
Yeah.
it didn't feel great, but like you said, you won't be left high and dry. And
Yeah.
sometimes that the word pivot, but I really feel
Mhm.
it's bigger than that. And
Yeah.
it's pivot means to really acknowledge everything in your life to make good decisions that are
Mhm.
best for you and your family. So
Exactly.
great feedback. What routines or mindsets have helped you maintain balance while still moving forward with the big goals?
Um, Planned rest.
Yes.
And we haven't always been good with it, especially me. So I would say this: I was 100% a workaholic. I
Mm.
needed to learn rest and the blessing more than anybody.
Mhm.
And I cried out to the Lord one day. I was like, all right, teach me how to do this your way because I don't know what I'm doing. And that's where some of this message came from. But whenever we do it right, we have planned rest, we have planned
Yeah,
vacations,
we have to
planned
plan
dates.
things,
Mhm.
we rely too much on spontaneity
Yeah.
in life, and that's
Oh,
just not realistic. So if you don't plan times to be
Hmm.
happy and to have fun,
Yeah.
it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And especially in marriage, it's very important that you plan times for date night, plan times to be intimate,
Hmm.
plan times to just sit alone, be quiet, plan times for everything, plan time to spend time with your kids if you have kids, because it's not just going to happen. And you have to prioritize those things just as much as you would your workflow.
Yeah.
Because it's more important, in my opinion, than your workflow, because out of that will come fruitful productivity in every other area of your life. Because if you're stressing out about your marriage, your relationship, your kids, things like that, you're just going to bring that to the job, you know. But if you're coming from a fulfilled, fruitful, restful place, when you get to your work, it's going to manifest in those areas as well. And we love our family, we love each other way more
Hmm.
than anything else that we do. And like
Yeah.
we said previously, if there's anything challenging our relationship, whether that's our relationship between each other or our relationship with God, it's turn it off.
Yeah.
Let's revamp. Let's talk about things, because we're not going to sacrifice that for anything.
No, our greatest ministry and purpose is to each other as husband and
Mhm.
wife. And actually, there was sure multiple times in our ministry where that's happened, but we actually for a season shut down our house meetings. That very
Mhm.
first thing we did,
Yep.
we realized we need to take more time for each other and work on our relationship and all of that. So we did that because it was like, okay, we're running into a burnout section here, we're
Yeah.
into an issue
Mhm.
here. There's something catching us up. We need to attend to that. And you just have to make it again, stopping. It's scary for people, but you got to stop.
Yeah.
Can't get so attached to the brand that you can't stop in, like you said, pivot. That's a good word for it. To really stop. And one of the most profound things that Jesus ever gave us advice was, it was after his disciples came back he sent them out 2 by 2. They went and did miracles in his name. They came back all excited, said, this happened. It was all amazing. We did all these things in your name. And then the first thing he told them after that was, come aside and eat and rest. That's what he told them. So he invited them to one of his desert places and said, let's rest and let's eat. And what was crazy was the people started following them and they couldn't. So then he went out and started mentioning to the people because they were just thronging them and following them in boats. People were following them across the sea. It was crazy. So yes, it's real. These things are real. All the alarm bells going off, all the family pulling on you, all the phone calls, the emails. It's real. It happens. But you have to decide, I'm going to step aside and I'm going to rest. I'm going to attend to what's important. Because if at the end of the day, whatever the vision or purpose is, you're kind of the key to it, right? Like you have to be the one there alive to do it. So if you're burnt out and leaving this world early from all the sickness and disease that comes from stress and anxiety, you're not going to be here to fulfill the purpose. So if the purpose is so important, attend to yourself because it won't get done without you.
Yeah, think about this example. If your house was on fire, what would you grab? What's most important to you? You know, if you have children, it would be your kids.
Yeah.
Kids, get out the house. You would do everything to get them out the house. You have pets. Some people, you know, are pet parents. You know, they grab the pets. They grab the things that are most important. So those things should always be in the forefront of your mind. They should always be prioritized. What would be the things I will grab in the fire? Yeah. And you should always keep those things as a priority and attend to those things most of all before anything else.
What I get out of that conversation, those two input areas that you provided was that spontaneity versus planning and balance. And I feel that most people are more spontaneous because of just the stresses and the workloads and just chasing and maybe wife has a different, or maybe they're not even married, or maybe it's a single person, or maybe it's retire age, whatever it is. I really am sensing such an admiration for you both and being so young, a young couple, a young family that already has such a great, amazing foundation in which to build upon. I am so just impressed with everything that you're speaking of, and I just really appreciate that. But again, I just really admire how young you both are with the vision that you have and the drive and the willingness to do whatever it takes, and maybe not being most popular, maybe not doing this, or maybe not being the wealthiest people on the planet. It's a mission. And I feel that sometimes when you work with your purpose and you share your blessings, I feel sometimes that's really way more rewarding than maybe any riches might have. And if everybody could have such a healthy foundation as you two, I feel that that's priceless. That's a lottery ticket right there. So I'm really happy for you both.
Yeah.
And you know what you're talking about too. That's really something. So another question, you've mentioned the blessing system. What's something countercultural about that mindset most people wouldn't expect?
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. No, I mean, it really is. When you start the idea of I need to do less to succeed more, you know, I need to slow down. I need to stop and not react when there's an emergency and that just try to figure it out. The debt is piling up and it was my fault. I made bad decisions, but it's not up to me to try to figure it out. That's all countercultural. Yeah. So the rest aspect is just straight up countercultural to the system that we live in. It's not what we're taught. And I remember when Laura was first teaching it to me and walking me step by step, my flesh was screaming against, my mind was screaming against it because it was just, this doesn't sound right. I need to be a good, hardworking man. I need to provide for my family. I don't provide for my family. God provides for my family. I'm just the vessel he uses to get it done, but it's him. He is my provider, Jehovah Jireh. And if I truly believe that, then I've got to rest and listen. Because again, whatever he tells me to do, that's what he's going to provide for. That's what the grace is there for, because I'm very simply only doing what I'm being instructed. And I'll say this, you know, you have employees, if you're a boss or a manager, or a leader of any kind, you've got anybody in your organization that's under your employ and under your leadership, you know, you have different types of bad employees. You've got the ones who are just lazy and won't do anything. But one of the most annoying types of employees are the ones who will just do something different than what you said.
Yeah.
You tell them to do one thing, and then they go and like they kind of halfway do it, but then they go and add on a bunch of other stuff because they get their own idea. This will help, or this will, and it's like, I didn't ask you to do that. You know,
There's a lot of rework involved in that.
I appreciate the initiative and the drive and the zeal, but it harms the vision. It harms the organization when you can't follow instructions, you know, and very simply, I think that's the frustration God has with many of us. We just won't follow instructions, and you have to stop, you have to listen, which means you have to train your ear to listen, which is a whole other lesson about how to hear the voice of God. But that's what you have to practice. So I think all of that, just the very nature of the blessing system itself, is countercultural.
Yeah, and I mean, we live in a world that's full of anxiety. There's songs about anxiety looking over you. It's very popular, and I really don't get with it because anxiety is not normal. It shouldn't be normal to be afraid and have anxiety and worry and stress. You know, it shouldn't be normal. It's very, very common, but it's not normal. And what we preach and teach is that you can have rest, you can have peace, you can live a life free from toil, not free from challenges, because you're going to have challenges, but you will have the grace, you will have the keys, the tools, you will have the wisdom on how to navigate through those things without them tearing your whole life apart. And that's what we want to share with people, is that you can have it all, but do it God's way, and you will have the grace, and you don't have to be in fear of losing anything.
Yes.
Because if you live on this world system, outside of the blessing system, we all know this world can stop. We've experienced that. You know, the world can turn off and everything is shut down. And then what are you left with? You know, there's so many people got their eggs in one basket, and they freak out the moment TikTok about to shut down. You know, and I mean, I have compassion because I mean, yeah, but it shouldn't be that way. But with us, like we were talking about earlier, you know, we've been through the job layoffs and the shift in our finances and changes, but every time we're like, God, you have us, and he always came through for us. And the longer we're in this system, the more rest we grow into. And so we praise God for that. You know, we're not special, we're not unique in that sense. It's just that we have learned how to listen and obey.
Yeah, and I'll say this, want to very much hone in on this concept about rest. It's not about a lack of challenges. I can tell you right now, there is a laundry list of things that I can mentally look in on while we're talking right now and check out that need to be attended to. Things that are pressing, that deal with large sums of money and lots of people's, you know, lives, quote unquote, hanging in the balance, if you want to put it that way. There's a lot that I could be attending to right now. And I do. I definitely handle it, but I handle it in prayer. I sit and I listen. Most important part of my day is praying and listening. How do I address these things and these issues? Because as you grow, the issues only get bigger.
Yeah.
The dollar figure only gets bigger the more you go to. And some people fear success for that reason. More money, more problems. You know, like, I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to be a boss because all these people are depending on me. But as you go out and take on that responsibility, that productivity, yes, it's going to be bigger figures. There's going to be more people that are going to be dependent on you, and you're going to make decisions that affect more lives than just your own. And that's a part of the responsibility, but you're supposed to be able to still do that at rest. And so the issues I deal with now are way bigger than when we were in that apartment just wondering where we were going to get some furniture. But I've learned more rest now since then.
Yeah.
Excellent. I know I could talk to you too for a really long time, because this is such great value that I'm hearing, and I'm sure the people that are listening are also enjoying everything that you have to say. And unfortunately, we have getting to the end of our time period here, but I want to ask just one more question, and then I want you to both share about upcoming events and more about your podcast and how people can find you and subscribe and all that good stuff. So last question would be, if you had a life mission statement, how would that read right now?
Yeah, I believe it's funny because we've had many of a bio and a caption. We tried to figure out, you know, that, but most recently, and I think you kind of touched on it in the beginning, but we want to help people find their God-given purpose, and we want to help them get maximum results without toil. At the core of it, that's what it is. And to wrap it up even simpler, to help people live on the blessing. Yeah. That's it. What it's done for us, everyone needs it. It's what Jesus came to preach, and we need as many people as possible living on it, because as many people are living on it, as they grow and expand and affect the world and affect communities, we can help a lot of people. We could change this world. So that's, I believe, what we're here for.
Absolutely. I agree.
Excellent. So, in wrapping up this wonderful conversation, I want to just really give you the stage here and share how people can get a hold of you. You've got an upcoming event, Jalen.
Mhm.
I know that's a big one. It's
Yeah.
Big C, etc. So, share that. Let's hear about your podcast, how people
Yeah.
can get a hold of you, and then we'll wrap it up and hopefully maybe schedule something here in 6 months and catch up with you both.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. We'll have a whole new set of things to talk about then. So back to the industry that I'm in, Security Data Supply of Norfolk. We're holding our first trade show. It's a showcase. We're
Yay.
having a bunch of vendors there. 20 plus vendors already signed up, and people are signing up every day. So the great thing about this showcase is, yes, you'll be able to go into the ballroom. It's at Doubletree Hotel in Norfolk, Virginia, right up the street from our office. Security Data Supply of Norfolk. Another drop again, but yeah, you'll be able to go into the ballroom and see all the vendors and see the latest technology. We have some great folks there. But we're also having trainings all day. So if you are DCJS, you need registration renewals for either locksmith or security, electronic security. So in-service locksmith, in-service electronic security. You need your renewals. You're coming up on that time. Come to the event because you'll be able to get all your credits that day for either one of those. Can't do both at the same time, but either one of those and get your renewal without having to go online and pay and do your renewal that way. We will have John Kopensparger of Certified Training Academy on site to monitor the classes from some great teachers, and you'll get your DCGS credits. Simultaneously, if you're not on the security side of things, you're more on the low voltage, fiber, datacom, we do have Big C trainings going on. So if you're a Big C member and need some continuing education credits, you can get them as well. So actually, it's funny, those classes are signing up faster. There's a few spots that are only one spot left in the Legrand class, I think.
Oh, man, I get it.
So you definitely want to sign up. And if I think about it, I'll come back to here and drop the link to register for the event. If you're in the area or want to travel, it's going to be a great event. So that's the very next thing that's coming up. That's June 24th. That's a Tuesday. So that's the first thing coming up next. On the Third Floor Media side of things, we are constantly holding events. I had just held an Overcome the Pressure out of my office in Norfolk, men's Bible study. And that is actually just got uploaded to YouTube this morning. If you ever wanted to watch it back and see what we're teaching on, it was the source of everything. Great topic. Touched on some of the things we touched on today. So if you want to watch that, that's on our YouTube channel. Again, I'll come back and drop the link to our YouTube channel. If you can listen to this.
If you want to follow us on all of our social media platforms, just put in Jalen and Cacie.
That's it.
Just spell it correctly.
Yes.
And you will find us on Instagram. We're on TikTok, YouTube. Just Jalen and Cacie. You can follow us. Yes.
And most of everything is youtube.com/Jalen and Cacie, Instagram/Jalen and Cacie, TikTok. Everything is Jalen and Cacie. We were very fortunate to be able to grab all those handles for everything.
Make it easy for everyone.
So that is the best way to stay with us, because if you go to our platforms, you'll see us post about the different events. So Driven by Purpose, you have an event coming up very soon. We haven't quite announced it yet, but it is coming. So if you get on our socials and follow us, when we're ready to announce it, it'll come up. You can also join our newsletters from there. That's just the easiest way. Just follow us on our socials, Jalen and Cacie. You'll never miss any upcoming events.
Well, thank you, Jalen, for that. And I'll repost your upcoming event too on my page for the upcoming certification and CECs. And it looks like a really great event. And
it's going to be fun.
I know those are not easy to really plan and really get done, but it seems like you're doing it effortlessly with a great group of people. And just you two, I'm just really so proud of everything that you represent and the hard work that you've put in. And I do see a great amount of success coming your way and through other people and just helping other people. I know that there's greatness and goodness that is going to be long-term in both of your futures. And I wish you the best of success. We are also all on LinkedIn. And if you want to get a hold of Jalen and or Cacie, they can also be found Jalen Barnes, Cacie Barnes, and myself. Go to our LinkedIn pages, look at our circle profile picture. Underneath there is contact information. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us a personalized DM if you get a chance. And if you have any questions for Jalen or Cacie, I am sure they are looking forward to any feedback that you might have. And I'm sure any guidance that they might be able to offer you as well. So just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today, especially Jalen and Cacie. Just thank you for your valuable time. And we look forward to learning more updates here soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. We had a great time, Kevallyn. Thank you so much. We look forward to coming back again sometime soon.
You're welcome. And have a nice day. And